Jessica Samuelson from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and we are doing this presentation to encourage you to go out to Pahranagat before April 30th and register for the Carp Roundup that they are hosting for us. This is going to be a family program, so all questions and Q&A should be rated PG. Anything inappropriate will not be tolerated, and we'll either have to mute you, your conversations, or remove you from the program. Our information is here. You can screenshot or save our phone numbers and email addresses so that if you have any questions, you can let us know. We'll also show them at the end. Michelle Lopez is our amazing moderator for the evening, so she'll be switching slides for us and making sure this is recorded, and you'll be able to see it on YouTube within the week. Actually, and if anybody was here with us on last Thursday, this is going to be pretty similar, except I am on location at one of the ponds. Sean could not be with us today, but again, he was with us on Thursday. So you'll be able to hear all his commentary to these slides probably this week, and it'll pop up on YouTube. So if you get YouTube notifications from us, you'll be able to see when that shows up. So Sean has a lot of insight. He's been chasing huge carp, as you can see, for the last 6 years. And he's going to try to break the state record that is held up north at one of their urban ponds, which is at 35, and we'll show you some pics at the end. So we are just talking about the common carp. Luckily, that's all we have to worry about right now. And Jessica from Pahranagat will go over carp history and her range. And then I will go into fishing for carp, and Jessica will round us up with the roundup for 2021. So real quick, some facts about carp. They are not a protected species. They are an introduced species, normally from early settlers, because it is a fattening, nutritious food that was able to sustain travelers from east to west. It is a popular ornamental fish. One statistic found a lot of the carp was along railroads. And so, it came from Asia, and when people were building the railroads, they actually just kept it either as a pet, or then it became a food source. And they get big very quickly. So average all the way up to 48 inches. And one of the world records is at 88 pounds. And they adjust to about any conditions as long as there's aquatic vegetation. All right, on to you, Jessica, and I'll hit pause for myself.
There we go. So the common carp isn't originally from the US, it's actually from Asia. They were first brought to the US in 1831, and in the late 19th century, they were kind of distributed widely all around the country by the government as a food fish. Since then, taste buds have changed a little bit, and so they're now rarely eaten in the US, except for there are people who do have a taste for carp, but generally they're actually considered pests. So the common carp, like I said before, it's not native to the United States. It's actually from Asia, and people do eat them. The common carp is a large omnivorous fish. It has large scales, a long dorsal base fin, and 2 pairs of long barbels. I think of them as whiskers on its upper jaw. They were intentionally introduced in the Midwest in like the late 1800s. These days, especially at places like Pahranagat, we consider it a nuisance fish or an invasive species. So a little bit of Pahranagat history. Pahranagat is a national wildlife refuge that's set aside for migratory birds. So everything we do at the refuge boils down to, is this good for the ducks? The upper lake of the refuge is managed primarily for waterfowl, but there are carp in the lake. And the thing about the carp is that they are bottom feeders. So they actually rip up all of the plants and other vegetation that the ducks need for food or in some cases shelter. So we aren't big fans of the carp here, which is why we encourage people to fish for them and to get them out of the lake for us. The carp have been a serious problem in the lake for a long time. We had our first removal project to get rid of them in 1996. They were back in just a couple of years. And then in 2008, 2009, we drained the lake to try to eliminate the carp, and they came back again. And then I want to say in 2016 or 17, we tried it again. The carp are back. They're very tenacious fish. But currently, as things stand, what's in the lake as far as fish is there's a lot of carp, and there's some black bullhead catfish, and there's also a huge largemouth bass. The best time to fish for the bass is from April to June, and then for the bullheads, it's June through August. The upper lake itself has 15 campsites. They're first come, first serve. So if you get there and it's open, you're welcome to stay there overnight. We've got pit toilets, but no running water. And each campsite has a picnic table, a grill, and most of them have fire rings. One thing to keep in mind if you do want to camp here is that in the summer it does get really hot. Obviously, we're in southern Nevada. So the summer temperatures often get to 100 or over. And in the winter, it actually flip-flops, and we do get sometimes below freezing. So just something to keep in mind.
All right, I am back. I just had a recast. Hopefully we can catch a fish while we're with you today. So other carp species we do not want whatsoever are big head carp, silver carp, and those are the ones that like to fly down rivers, like Mississippi's covered in them. U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. In agriculture, they're all trying to get rid of them because it's competition for the native species, and that's a big commercial fish area. So it's not good for the commerce in the area as well. Grass carp, there has been rumor of one in the area. So if we do see it, we want it out of there. Because one thing that carp do as well is they eat eggs because they eat everything off the bottom. So unfortunately, that's one reason there's not really many bass in Pahranagat, is because the carp eat eggs. So those are the 4 species we are trying to avoid. And just like Jessica said, common carp's here, and we try to get rid of them, and it's just really hard to do. So carp are hiding in thick vegetation. So if you see reeds sticking out, that's where you want to be casting near. They are also in rivers and lakes, so Colorado River is a great place for them. Weed beds, so if you see a bed of weeds, there's probably going to be a carp, or in our area we have tilapia, so they also make beds. And channels, anything off the bottom loves channel. Well, fish period love channels. So if you see like a light, a dark, and then a light, that is a great place to cast your line. It doesn't have to be way far out, but the fact that it's deep down, it blocks the sun from the fish, makes them feel safe if they're in the shadow, and that's where you're going to find them. Also muddy water, because they are stirring it up. So anything stagnant, right now Sunset Park's looking a little rough. Their water is very stagnant, but the carp are doing quite well. And shallow rifts waters or high vegetation, like I was saying, anything with the reeds sticking out is really good. So The Fishbrain app is pretty awesome. Part of our conference recently is they will work with us and make sure that all the information is up to date. So your hotspots, when you type in carp on Fishbrain, will be Pahranagat, Lake Mead Recreation Area, and our urban ponds. And sorry, on there again, if you see the little crankbait, which is the little lure fish on the bottom there, that means that they're sharing how they caught it. And worms are definitely an awesome one for carp to go after. So carp food, pretty much in order. They love sugary corn, especially if you add a little sugar to it. Homemade dough balls, anything like that is awesome. Cornmeal, especially if you make it doughy, and make your own little mix. Dog food, but it has to be softened obviously to get on the hook, or you can stuff it into the red. Let me try to get this on. Can you, Michelle, do a side-by-side spotlight? I don't know if that works for this, but show you something that you can use. It's usually for catfish. These come with the leader line on it, but if I can show this up close here, sorry, there we go. These little treble hooks, you can stick the bait down in there, and then like the mixture I'm going to show you that I made for today and that we're going to test out at Pahranagat, you would dip it in here and it kind of chums the water too. So those are awesome. I have hooks trying to escape. All right. So anything sugary, Jello and cherry, natural, that cherry for the drinks or for Shirley Temples, that extra sugary substance, and it's red. It just attracts them. It makes them think it's like an egg. And then spicy aromatic foods. So one of the tricks I even learned is Sean's had a lot of success with curry and cayenne. So that is something maybe to add to your sugary corn. So carp tips and tricks. Make sure you have a nice strong fishing pole. Let me grab one here. So you want a nice fishing pole that's not too bendy. This is more of a medium weight, so you want a medium heavy weight, and you want it to be at least 7 foot. And that way you're not breaking your fishing pole going after these guys. Also, a strong reel as you're pulling them in. Let them fight just like you see people do in the oceans. You want to let them fight, and you don't want anything weak. It is going to be really fun for the kids to feel, or for somebody that hasn't been catching a lot lately, but your pole may not survive, or your reel may not survive, and you may end up wanting to have gloves on because your hand reeling it in. Circle hooks are great, and I'll show you the full setup once we go through this real quick. So circle hooks or octopus hooks, because it kind of loops in, and that way it hooks onto their tough lips really well. And drop shot rigs, that way it's just off the bottom. They do cruise the bottom, but they will come up for it, and that way you're not stuck in the weeds, plants, rocks, and they're kind of grabbing for it. They're not just sneaking by, and that way you know you really have a good hook, a good bite. Sometimes a water bobber would be really good, and then that way you can kind of adjust how you want it in the water and what column. And then just know your water, get out there and keep trying. It's a lot of fun catching these guys. And so it's really good for the environment. So learn that water, test it out. It may take a few hours, it may take a few days. So if you can do that, I highly recommend it. Catfish and carp rigs go hand in hand, and here's the drop shot rig for the catfish. It goes right off the line. So I'll show you all of that in a second. And actually, if we want to stop sharing, and then I'll go big and show you guys how I have this one set up. So since we're just at the urban pond here, let me get a little closer. So I do have a stronger reel or rod, one that has been around a while. So I'm not too worried about it if we do catch something awesome today. But how I set it up, and I did this one a little different than the other ones. I'll grab that one out too. So I do have the weight on the bottom. So this is going to sit on the bottom, and we're at an urban pond without a lot of wind. So I just have a light weight. If we're going to Pahranagat, we're going to want to get a bigger weight, probably like almost a ½ ounce weight. I'm going to scoot back a little bit and have that on the bottom. That way it comes out of the rocks easily too. If you can do the bullet weights, those are even better because they're skinnier and they'll pop right out if they get into reeds or rocks. So off the side of the line, a little ways up, I put a split shot, and I put actually just this little leader because in this water there are fish with teeth. So that way it sticks off, and then I have the hook off to the side. And this one's kind of like a circle hook, kind of loops there. And then that way it hooks onto that lip really nicely. And you can see here how it is sticking off the weight. And then this is the mixture I made for everybody based on Sean's suggestions. So I took heavy syrup, and I actually took sponges. I'll show you guys in the next slide, and just a little yellow sponge. So it kind of looks corny, and it absorbs all the sugar, cayenne, curry, and vanilla. That was the one I forgot to tell you guys about. A little vanilla is in here too. Just the cheap stuff. We don't want to use all the expensive stuff that we use for baking. And they have different sizes. So I have little itty bitty ones. And then for the bigger hooks, I would definitely recommend stringing it on just like you would a worm, or like a drop shot rig for a bass. You put the worm up on the hook. And then that way, let me string it. So this one's a little smaller, and they do not come off. These sponges are pretty awesome. I make sure I do it like sideways so it doesn't rip. I do it through, right through the middle. And it's actually hard to push through. And if I get rid of all the juice, and then that way it can still hook. It's kind of blocking the tip so it doesn't get stuck in the reeds. And I'll pinch it, make sure there's nothing in, dip it back in the mixture so it's nice and juicy, and then cast it out. I hope that made sense. If there are any questions, let me know. I'm gonna rinse my hands really quick. All right, and we'll go back to the PowerPoint. All right, thank you, perfect. So the counterbalance rig, so there are hooks with the bait end off the other end, so then you would just put your corn, put your sponge on the opposite end of the hook, and so those work really, really well too. And again, if this is going too fast, we can go back to it at the end if you have any questions about anything, or you can definitely watch it later on this next week. So here's that sponge. So you put the hook on the sponge just above the weight there, and you see how easily it just sits on the bottom, and then that way that food source is just above the bottom of the water. And you can see the carp going in for it right above the line. So you may even feel it hit the line before it tries to bite the sponge. So give it a minute to really take it. And think about it, carp is a sucker fish. So you're definitely gonna feel a tug as it's slurping, and that's when you're gonna wanna hook it in. It's gonna be that like flick hook. All right, so it is an awesome beginner fish. Highly recommend it for families to get out. If you're looking for something to do the next couple weeks, get out there. You can see that amazing smile on the kid's face with the monster carp he caught. You can even tie on dog food, like it's showing a rabbit food. For other carp species, it's more popular. And that on the right is one of the, it's actually from a California LA pond. And yeah, it's pretty neat. It wasn't anything that anybody expected, but you can screenshot it or look up LA pond record carp. And here is Sean's awesome fish. He got a 20-pounder. This is how I met him when he called in to get his trophy report. We do anything over a certain pound of fish of each species, you can definitely get a trophy record. So let us know if you catch anything like that. And here is our record state. So it was a Virginia lake right in the middle of downtown Reno. And it was just actually during COVID became our 2020 March state record. So that was pretty neat to get to see that. Previously it was in the Truckee River of all places, which is an amazing trout fishery. So there were carp in there. And I've actually heard there's some really awesome spots to bow fish for carp in the Truckee River. And it was on our talk Saturday with Dawn, who went over bow fishing 101 with some of the anglers from the Reno area. So they are totally edible, crispy. That way it gets rid of the bones. Anything fried is always good. Drunken carp, extra seasoning always gets rid of that fishy flavor that most carp have. Baked carp or actually into crab cakes is really good, and that way you kind of season it almost like a falafel style carp cake, but they're totally edible. And there's a lot of health benefits because they are veggie eaters, because they eat all the algae, which carries omega-3s. It helps your heart health. It helps your respiratory. If you have any chronic issues, it can actually help your stomach because of the omegas, and boost immunity. So this is the one fish. There is no regulation on how many you can have, and it can totally make you very healthy. Definitely worth a try. So fry it up, get rid of those little bones, and you would be good to go. So sometimes other bottom feeders are some of our native species that are endangered because they look like carp. People grab them out of the water. If you do take these out of the water, put them right back in. And please just let us know that you caught one. That way we kind of know what area they're in and where to look for them and make sure that they're reproducing well. In the bottom left is a razorback sucker. I'd say he's the closest to look like him. But when people are bow fishing or fishing and you just see this big yellow thing in the water, a humpback chub might even look like it. So, and that's the top left fish. So just be careful when you're out there. If it is not the carp that looks like a giant goldfish, put it back, take a picture, let us know. We have a bunch of information on our website, and you can just click on fishing. It's right up you can see the top banner there, or you can click on the middle tab right off the main page. We are revamping it, so it's going to look a little different, but it's going to be even easier to find information. And someone in our history has created an amazing Google map. So you can actually click on it and you can save it to your phone and hit all of our Nevada waters. And you can see that they're all noted with the little fish there in the middle. Thank you, Michelle, is shared in the chat. In the middle there is Pahranagat, and just north of that is Hyco, where there are tons of black bullhead catfish to be caught as well. And then you can see some of the urban ponds on the very bottom. You can even make your own favorite fishable map. So definitely recommend doing that. This is from a couple of years ago. One of our, I think he even got a prize for that big one on the bottom there. So he did really well. We just recommend being an ethical angler, fish responsibly, pack it in, pack it out, which is respecting your water, the land, and your fellow angler by giving them room. Funniest thing, social distancing is fishing 101, right? You don't want to be within a fishing pole of somebody because you don't want to get hooked. I'd say even 2 fishing poles, because the line at the end, especially if they're using a bobber, is a little long. For other species, sport fish, there are limits. So if they're too small for monsters, they're going to reproduce and create us more fish. So try to leave those awesome big fish in the waters so we can they can reproduce and give us more fish to catch. So try to take that middle weight. Look up our trophy size fish and try to go in the middle there somewhere. So most fish around 5 pounds is right in the middle. Preserve your passion and share it with friends, family, and other kids. Get them out, get your friends with kids out. If you don't have any, get the grandkids out, just keep passing it on. What's been amazing, I think we're up like 50% fishing in our state. And it's just, this pond's usually covered in people. We got lucky tonight that we found the spot. All right, Jessica.
All right, so the Pahranagat Refuge is currently hosting what we're calling our Carp Roundup fishing competition. And basically we're trying to encourage people to come out to the refuge, fish for carp and, get them out of the lake, but also it's a great way to, visit the refuge if you haven't before, practice fishing, that sort of thing. How the competition is basically working is that, first of all, you do have to register in advance. There is the link for the registration is in the chat. And then we will have prizes in both adult and child divisions for the biggest fish and the biggest carp and the most carp caught. So you do have, in order for a fish to qualify, it has to be caught at Pahranagat between April 16th and April 30th, and it has to be a carp. So you do have to have a current Nevada fishing license to fish at Pahranagat. When you catch a fish, how you will actually enter it into the competition is you will send it to the Pahranagat email address. And we're going to need a picture showing that it was in fact caught at Pahranagat, and then a picture in front of a scale and a tape measure so that we can see how big it is. And it's also a good idea to have the timestamp visible so we can see, what day it was taken. That's kind of the competition in a nutshell. And after the 30th, once we have all the entries, we'll be going through them all and figure out who the winners are. And then those will be announced definitely on our Facebook pages, possibly elsewhere as well.
All right, so there are some amazing fishing checklists online. Highly recommend grabbing one. Make sure you have a trash bag too to pack out your garbage or anybody else's. Have your fishing license if you're 12 and older. Yes, we are going after carp, which are an unprotected species, but there are sport fish in the water, so you do need to have your license. 12 to 17 is a youth combo license, and it's only $15, and same with the senior license, or some of our special military licenses as well are only $15 for a whole year. And the Nevada license for resident, anyone that's lived here 6 months, is only $41. And so if you think about it, if you go fishing once a month, it's only $4 for a lot of fun. So just learn those waters, get out. Also know that urban ponds only have a 3 fish limit, not a 3 species limit. It's 3 fish total. So if you're catching a trout, a bass, and a bluegill, that's 3 fish. Lead by example. That goes back to the angler ethics, and check current weather conditions. Yesterday morning's a perfect example of we thought the lake was going to be calm. Once we got out there, it was white cap, so we didn't get out on the water. So just make sure you are prepared, but you can go to ndallicensing.com and get your license, and then you just screenshot it and save it. You don't have to print it out or anything. There were a couple questions I'll answer in just a moment. Okay, so the one question I saw, how do they keep coming back? They're kind of like crawdads or pike or some of these amazingly tough species. They can live in mud. So as long as there's moisture, like we can't get rid of the crawdads, we can't get rid of mosquito fish, we can't get rid of carp sometimes. They can literally live in mud. So they just need this much water, and no matter what we do, sometimes we can't get rid of them.
We also
oh yeah,
some carp upstream of the refuge. So if we get rid of all the carp on the refuge, that doesn't necessarily mean that that more carp won't come in from upstream.
So thank you for co-hosting with me tonight, and thank you all for attending. Embrace the outdoors, use hashtag #ResponsibleRecreation. It goes to U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and then us, we check for it, and we'll share pictures. There's also a survey on your way out, and it just lets us know what you thought about the presentation tonight and what you'd like to see in the future. And again, take a picture of this, screenshot of whatever you want to do to save our information for later on. I will be the fishing questions for the carp roundup, and then anything Pahranagat specific, please let Jessica know. Yeah, so sometimes a game warden can tell the difference between, the question was about keeping your fish. So it does have to be dead, but for bass or trout or some species, or actually bass and pike are similar. You want to keep the head or sometimes the tail, some sort of ID of that fish. You can clean it there, but you may want to actually just leave it in the skin with the head until you get home, and then cut the ends off of your fish if you're taking it home, just to make sure that they can differentiate your species. So, thank you, good question. Sorry, I don't have a tall enough tripod, so I keep bending down. I think, what was the other question? Oh yeah, and so make sure it is dead before it goes. That was the other question. No transporting live aquatic species, period.
There was another question that just came into the Q&A. Is there any better part of the day to fish than not?
Yes. This afternoon is probably not ideal. It's 85 out here, and it's already getting kind of warm for us, which means it's getting warm for the fish, and it's really bright. It makes them scared to come out. Most species at sunrise and sunset, and that includes bluegill. Actually, one of the biggest bluegill we've ever seen, my father-in-law caught, and I'd have to say it's like bigger than my hand. And it was actually right after sunset. So even bluegill kind of are better at night. So mornings, when it's still cool in the summer, and even at that, it kind of turns off when it's around 100. So when it's too hot for you, it's too hot for the fish. It can never be too cold though. And we were just at Eagle Valley last weekend, and it was snowing, and the trout were loving it, and we were just nonstop catching it. So sunrise, sunset is always better. They definitely like turned off right around noon, or yeah, right around 12. So good questions. Any other questions?
I think we are all caught up on questions for right now.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you all again for coming and supporting our conservation education programs. If you're spearfishing and you accidentally catch a species, it's really bad. It is an accident, but so that's one of the things when you're both fishing and spearfishing, you just have to make sure you can shadow guess it. So if we can, would it be too hard to go back to that slide? Because the fins are going to look different. So knowing your fish, even with an outline, would be really, really good. That way you don't accidentally kill them. So the razorback sucker on the bottom there, the fin is a little more angulated, and it's more narrow, and the head's flatter. So a carp's more round, football-y. So just make sure you see that when you're shooting them. Yeah, they're endangered because they just can't survive. They don't have any spines. All the other fish have spines. They just do not have any spines, any defense mechanism. They're our version of a manatee because they are just so defenseless. It's really sad. I got to do a survey in October or November, and those poor little guys. They're just smooth little water cows. Yeah, so learn your shadows. It's one of our actually outreach table games. If we can start doing that kind of stuff again, hopefully, if we get back into those kind of events, is one of my table games where the kids have to match the fish to the shadow. How many of them do you think are in Nevada? Carp or endangered species? Carp are in like every water. It's insane. Endangered species. These actually, if you go to some of our previous YouTube videos, we actually did some aquatic endangered species videos, endemic species, and they're almost all endangered because of water shortages and water changes. So the Colorado River got dammed up, totally changed the environment for them, made it more adaptable for other species, so kind of slowed down their migration and their spawning patterns. So that kind of affected it. So we actually care for them, raise them up so that they can survive in the wild. I would have to get back to you on that question, but you can definitely email me and I will ask our biologists how many there are. It should be on our on the endangered species list. There's like a national red list of all the endangered species in the world. But awesome questions. I think we'll get going. You guys are awesome. Have a good night. And yeah, please email us if you have any questions. Tons of carp are in Lake Mead. I think Government Wash is pretty much 50% carp. It's perfect warm water, the vegetation, especially now with the water going down again for the summer. It's the perfect environment for them. Any of those coves like that along Boulder Beach, they hang out. Pahranagat's literally covered. It's actually one of my coolest memories is going out there. We were walking the dike at Pahranagat and it was a really windy day, and literally it was just coming straight up from the south heading north, the water, and we're looking down and you just see waves and waves and waves, and the fish were so big in the lake. And this was probably right before they tried to drain them out and push the water onto the ranches. You could see the fish in the waves, and it looked like dolphins, almost like small dolphins in the waves, and it's just murky water. But it's crazy, like they were that big and that prominent and that numerous. So carp are pretty impressive.
Another question just came in. Will there be any signs at Pahranagat for the tournament?
I don't think so, because it's literally every day. So it started Friday and it ends the 30th. We have the registration links on there and on the event pages. And the 24th, I will have a sign up, but the best way to do is if you're coming up from the Vegas Valley, as I'll set up around 8:30, and then at 9, when you're coming up, you'll see the campgrounds to the left. You're gonna go up and then back down, and you'll see the blue banner, my fishing banner that I'll have with me. And then we might be able to.
More warning. We have some road construction happening at the refuge right now. So normally there is a big sign that says Pahranagat Campground, turn here. they took the sign down so that they could do the road construction. So just keep an eye out for that dirt road on the left-hand side. Basically, if you get out of the construction zone, you've gone too far. If you hit the town of Alamo, you've gone way too far. Just turn around and come back. But yeah, it's just one of those things we're dealing with right now. In the long run, we'll have turn lanes to the refuge, so it'll be a lot safer to get there. In the meantime, you just don't have a sign.
I was looking for that Friday night when I was going up there too.
Oh, no.
So I was like, all right, how am I going to tell people to look for it? But yeah, you literally drive past the campgrounds and then it's like your next turn in. It's a big dirt road turn off. So we'll try to maybe even put like a crane on the corner so you can kind of something to catch your eye. So yeah, Saturday. Oh, I don't know if I officially said that. This Saturday, I will be out there from 9 to 11. I don't know if I'm going to run over to Lake Mead after that for the amateur bass tournament. So that's why I'm saying 9 to 11. And I will have loaner equipment and bait options and all kinds of stuff. So if you need anything, please fill out the survey and let me know, so make sure I bring enough. And then yeah, Sean said to message him on Facebook if you have any carp catching questions. All right. Well, thank you all. I think we'll call it quits. And yeah, please email us if you think of anything else. Have a good night.